In der heutigen Episode habe ich Greg Taylor zu Gast, um mit ihm über den aktuellen Stand der Basic Auth Deaktivierung in Exchange Online zu sprechen. Wir sprechen auch darüber, wie das gesamte Thema von Kunden und Softwareherstellern aufgenommen wurde. Aber genug der Vorrede. Los geht's! So, Greg, it's a pleasure having you as a guest on my podcast. Can you please introduce yourself quickly for our listeners?
Certainly, and it's great to be here. Thanks, Thomas. I'm Greg Taylor. I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft. I work on Microsoft 365. I'm primarily focused on Exchange, authentication, security, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so our today's topic is the disablement of basic authentication in Exchange Online. And I think one of the questions that our listeners are interested in is, when did the journey for disabling the basic authentication initially begin?
Yeah, well, basic authentication. Well, it feels like it began years ago, and I was much younger when it felt like it. Well, it was 3 years ago, to be precise. So I would say just about 3 years ago, I remember a PM in Exchange coming to talk to me, and I had a different role at the time. I was the director of marketing for Exchange, which was an interesting couple of years. But one of the product managers came and said we wanted to turn off basic auth in Exchange Online for security reasons. Mm-hmm. And would I be able to help sort of communicate to customers and get the word out what we were going to do and why and everything else. And that was 3 years ago. And I sort of have changed roles in that time. It's been that long a project. So I went from just handling the sort of public announcement, communication and everything, to then moving back into the engineering team and actually running the migration or the deprecation itself, turning off basic auth for everything. So yeah, I've been doing this for 3 years, believe it or not.
So I do remember that there was quite a bit of back and forth on the date and when it's now being enforced or not being enforced. What's now the final or not so final date? So it's quite interesting to follow.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that was never, it was never planned to take 3 years, right? It's not as though we sat down at the beginning and thought it would take that long. We perhaps naively thought we'll tell everyone to stop using basic auth, and they will. And of course, that's not how these things work, right? And so we had to delay once. We gave everyone a year to start with, and then we realized that a year wasn't going to be enough time, clearly, and so we delayed a little. And then we had a pandemic, right? And that was rather unpredictable. None of us expected that. And that changed the priorities for a whole bunch of customers. Suddenly everyone became more, focused on remote work and all of these business continuity problems that we were all dealing with. And so the focus shifted. So rather than try and sort of force everyone to, carry on doing our thing for basic auth, we kind of eased up a bit, allowing everyone to just kind of figure out some of these bigger problems they needed to do. And then we decided to come back and keep pushing on the path we were on. So we have delayed a couple of times, but, a year ago we announced we were going to do it, and we did it. So
what's the current state of then for an Exchange Online across the globe?
Current state is we turned off basic auth for millions of customers. Millions. I mean, the numbers I'm going to share, they're startling numbers. If there's one thing I've learned with this whole project is just numbers are crazy. Some of the numbers are crazy. It was the number of people using basic auth to begin with was crazy. The number of people still using basic auth after 2 years was still crazy. We started turning off basic auth for one of the first things we did was we started turning off basic auth for all the customers who weren't using it. And there are millions of those. Right? So there were millions of tenants that had basic auth enabled but didn't use it. So the first thing we did was we started turning Basic Auth off for them to help protect them against being attacked by Basic Auth. And then we turned our focus to the real customers that were using it still, the customers that were still really using it. And so we've turned off millions of those as well. I would say right now our usage is at 5% or less of what it was when we started. We've reduced by 95 or more percent. We have the small amount of customers, relatively speaking, who asked for a bit more time or re-enabled something, and they're going to keep going for a little bit longer. But then early in 2023, we will be fully off Basic Auth gone in Exchange Online.
Okay, that's cool. So, were you approached even not only by customers but by software vendors regarding their software solutions and how they were affected by disabling of Basic Auth across the protocol estate in Exchange Online?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not just us, right? Obviously, in our software, it's other other software developer companies as well. So I worked. One of the biggest of those is Apple, and so Apple was Apple and Android, uh, as we all know, everyone's got a phone in their hand, right? And so I spent a lot of time working with Apple in particular. We had a lot of Basic Auth with Apple devices. And so I worked closely with Apple, helping them build. And they already had an OAuth solution. So it wasn't that we had to ask them to build an OAuth solution. They already had that. They fixed that themselves years ago. But we needed to help migrate the accounts from Basic to Modern Auth. So I worked with Apple on that. I also worked with Google as well. And so, but we also have worked with a lot of large enterprise software companies too, who've had to go and add OAuth support to their protocol or their products. We really appreciate the work they've done as well. But of course, it's a two-part problem, right? So some of these big partners that we have can update their software, but our customers obviously need to go and deploy it. And so there's often a bit of a delay between us releasing a feature, let's say OAuth for POP and IMAP, it being adopted by one of our partners, and then more being adopted by our customers. So, it has been a long process, but it's been really great. I've built some really good relationships with some of these partners that build solutions on our platform, and I think it's been very successful, I would say.
Yeah, I currently see quite a few customers who use third-party products for various kinds of management tasks for Exchange Online that are now being caught by surprise because they ended their software agreements, let's say 1 or 2 years ago, and they do not have access to the most current release of the product and are now facing issues, right? Because the older versions just support Basic Auth, which had now stopped working towards Exchange Online. So this is it comes as a quote unquote surprise to customers.
Yeah, and listen, I talk to customers. I've done hundreds of customer calls over the last years, right? And many of them, yes, they do have these third-party software vendors who need to add OAuth support. And as you say, some of them perhaps don't have current support contracts or don't have current maintenance or whatever it is. It's going to require an upgrade. And some of the biggest customers in the world, I mean, some of these take a big CRM platform, something, right? I mean, these are not trivial upgrades. These are, big software projects that require a lot of time. And in some cases, some of our customers left it quite late and so are now rushing and pushing as hard as they can. And that was one of the reasons why we did allow some customers a little more time, the opportunity to just get themselves a little more time. And I'm going to say in 99.9% of cases, that additional amount of time will be sufficient. There are a very small number who will not be ready in time, and we're dealing with those on a case-by-case basis. Some of them are just going to get cut off, you know. But most, I would say, there's really very, very few that haven't managed to do the work. So you know, it's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, so that brings me to another question, because even though that we are now in the final stage of disabling basic auth, there was still the option for opting out for the disablement in this regular phase of the disablement. So how many organizations opted out of the basic auth process?
How many opted out? Great question. So tens of thousands, I'll say. So those that opted out. So there were two phases to this. There was the first phase was September, during September 2022, and in September we said, if you know you won't be ready, please tell us during September and we will delay you. And I'll tell you, there were about, I'll give you a real number then, Thomas, 17,000 tenants. 17,000 customers said during September, I will not be ready. I need a bit more time. 17,000 sounds like a lot. 17,000 is not a lot of our customers, right? So the 17,000 said, I've read the blog, I understand, I'm not going to be ready. Fine. Then we started turning people off in October. And October was a busy month for support.
I think so.
Right? And there were a lot of customers who had not read the message center, who had not read the blogs. And I'm going to say, if there's one lesson that comes, if you're a customer and you are not reading the message center, you know, you are putting yourself at risk of a problem. The message center is how we communicate change. And I know we send you way too many message center posts. Trust me, I know. But keep reading the message center. Make sure you have an idea of what's coming so that you're not surprised. Because when I get to talk to customers because they got cut off or some kind of disaster or whatever, right? You know, the boss says, hey, how come we didn't know about this change? And then when I say, well, we put it in the message center, then their IT admin looks kind of like a little embarrassed and like, oh, I didn't. So anyway, so during October, we turned off Basic Auth for an enormous amount of tenants. And a small percentage, I don't really want to give you a number. I can't do that, right? But what if I said it was something like, I'm going to give you a percentage, less than 5% of the tenants we turned off re-enabled something. There you go. Which is pretty good, right? I mean, you know, less than 5% of the customers weren't ready and needed a bit more time. And so now they have a little bit more time through till the end of the year. And then hopefully that will be sufficient and we'll turn everybody off. But, you know, being able to turn off 95% of Basic Auth in 1 month, I think is quite impressive.
Absolutely so. And I think this is definitely an enhancement for enhancing the security or security of the Exchange Online landscape at all. So,
you know, and that it's the security is what it's all about, Thomas. Right? I mean, this is not about us just, you know, we don't want to turn on, we don't want to leave Basic Auth turned on because, you know, we can't afford it, right, or whatever. It has nothing to do with that. I'm having emails. I have an email thread in front of me right now, and I was having a Teams chat before we got to talk about another customer who doesn't even realize they're undergoing a password spray using IMAP right now.
Oh, wow.
So they don't know it's happening. I can see it's happening. We can see an IMAP and SMTP are predominantly the protocols being used these days, and customers are being sprayed. And by that, we mean there are attempts to guess usernames and passwords constantly across many of our customers, because there are tools available, and the tool, you just give it an SMTP domain and it will go and try all kinds of usernames and all kinds of passwords, and the idea is to try and get lucky. Well, and it all uses basic auth.
Yeah.
And that's why we're closing this thing off.
So let's switch to a Exchange hybrid question in that regard. So does disabling of basic auth in Exchange Online affect organizations running Exchange hybrid in any way? For example, hybrid mail flow or hybrid communication, depending on the current, let's say, even talking about the maybe required CU update required on premises.
So the answer should be a no, right? There shouldn't be any impact on customers who are in hybrid, who have mailboxes on-prem and in the cloud. We're not making any changes to on-prem Exchange. Now, on-prem Exchange 2019 has authentication policies. So, if you are, because one of the questions we get asked is, so you're going to turn off basic auth in Exchange Online. What about Exchange on-prem? I have Exchange on-prem as well. Well, we're not touching Exchange on-prem. The number of possible, variations on configuration are infinite with on-prem, obviously. And so we can't really go ahead and do that. But what we did do was add auth policies to Exchange 2019. So if you have Exchange 2019 on-prem, you can use authentication policies to block basic auth. If you configure hybrid modern auth, then you're doing OAuth with both on-prem mailboxes and cloud mailboxes, and that's by far the best configuration. But there shouldn't really be the impact of us disabling basic auth in Exchange Online should not have any impact on Exchange on-prem. Tell me if I'm wrong, right? And there is some impact, but I'm not aware of any potential impact.
I'm not at this point. I'm not aware of any either, but I think that the message is pretty important to organizations that running hybrid, that they do not have to worry about their current hybrid configuration.
Good point. Yeah.
Besides, just to get the message across, stay on the latest CU update for your supported Exchange server editions.
Exchange is that's the great advice. I mean, Exchange has had on-prem has had a rough couple of years with some security issues and vulnerabilities, and so there has never been there's never been a more important time to keep up to date on-prem. And I know I work at Microsoft and I'm supposed to say this, but there's never been a better time to move mailboxes to the cloud if you can, and make it our problem and not your problem. So running on-prem is a risk these days. And, if you can't keep it up to date, then just move your mailboxes and make it our problem, and we'll do our best to take care of them.
Yeah. So, is there any impact, so measurable impact of disabling basic auth from an operational perspective in Exchange Online or Azure Active Directory? So do you see, if any information to share, that you see, okay, due to the disabling of basic auth, you see a deduction of whatever kind of workload in the cloud service?
That's really interesting. So yes, the answer is you can. So there's two aspects. One is from a customer standpoint, the amount of traffic you'll see in the Azure AD sign-in reports will reduce. We block basic auth in Exchange Online at Exchange Online, which is the first point of connection a client makes when it's using legacy auth. It's a little hard to describe verbally. It's always easier with a picture, I find this one, right? But the auth flow for basic auth clients is client connects to Exchange. Exchange then proxies the connection to Azure to do the authentication, authorization, conditional access, and everything. Well, So in other words, you see a lot of traffic in Azure, and Exchange Online shows as being the client, even though the protocol is IMAP or POP or whatever. In other words, Exchange Online sort of proxies this traffic from the basic auth client to Azure, and you will see all of these sign-in logs saying so.
Mm.
But when we block basic auth in Exchange Online, we block it at Exchange, which means we then never send the traffic to Azure. So you'll see if you were using basic auth, you'll see a reduction in the amount of data you see in Azure. So my point is, when we block basic auth at Exchange, you will not see anything in Azure to tell you that we did it. Now that can be a little different than something like conditional access.
Mm.
So if you block legacy auth with conditional access, you see all the logs and you see that it was blocked. But when we block Exchange Online basic auth, you won't see any logs because it's already been blocked before it even got to Azure. So there can be one operational difference that a customer might notice. You don't actually see what we blocked, right?
Right.
From our standpoint, from my perspective, I see the number of requests that we block, and I track those right now. And I was tracking those through October when we were blocking a large number of customers. And I saw, I'll show you, at peak, we were blocking 80 million basic auth logon requests per hour.
Wow.
80 million per hour. And I'll tell you, some customers had some really badly written apps. And so what they were doing was, IMAP again. It's always IMAP. If it's not DNS, it's IMAP. It's, lessons I've learned,
Okay.
right? If the IMAP app can't log in, instead of backing off and waiting, it just tried again.
Okay.
So I was seeing a lot of single
Wow.
sort of applications from single tenants just repeatedly trying over and over and over again. And that's a really poorly written app, right? I mean, just, retry once or twice, great, but then back off and wait.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we were seeing enormous amounts of failed logon requests. And that has now reduced as customers have either re-enabled the protocol, which is one option or possibility still for the time being, or they've figured out what the problem was, reconfigured the app, fixed it, in other words. So there's been both a big jump in the number of blocked requests, as you would expect, and a reduction in the number of logs Azure sees because we're blocking basic auth at Exchange.
That's quite awesome. So what will you do as soon as you disable the very last tenant with basic auth enabled, and mostly then basic auth is off? 365.
There's a little bit to do. Yeah, I mean, one is a vacation would be nice, right? But there's a little bit more work to do. What I need to do before we completely finish is we block basic auth for everyone. Great. We need to clean up some of the user experience, the auth policy things, and stuff like that. We have that to do. But I'm already looking. It's I've become slightly interested in turning stuff off, and
okay, so
you can call me I'm the Grim Reaper of Exchange right now. But one of the benefits of us turning things off. So obviously there's the security benefit, and that's clear, right? No doubt. All of the old any old legacy technology, typically you can put a security angle on it, right? All of the old, because how could 15 years ago any code that was written imagine the world that we're in today? So it's quite easy to think about getting rid of old stuff helps improve security, and that's generally true. But getting rid of old stuff also allows us to innovate at a faster pace, because if you can only innovate as fast as your slowest customer moves, it slows you down. And so I'm kind of interested in what other technologies, protocols, or areas do we have that we're carrying forward that have better options available, have replacements, alternatives that customers just haven't moved to. Auth was always available or has been available for years, but people don't move to it because basic auth worked fine until it stopped working fine, So I guess my answer to that is I'm looking at what other things. And let me ask you the question: what do you think we should turn off next? What do you think I should go after next?
Actually, I think that we need to embrace using MS Graph.
Okay.
And as soon as we do have a feature feature parity between managing cloud resources with PowerShell with MS Graph, I think then we can talk about getting rid of PowerShell. I know that some people will now start hitting on me for saying this, but I think that from a technology perspective, PowerShell is some kind of a legacy management tool.
Okay.
And what personally drives me crazy the most with PowerShell is that mostly each commandlet had a different developer making a decision on how the commandlet behaves in a standard output, as an example.
Right.
Which makes it hard for administrators to learn PowerShell.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying PowerShell. We should kill off PowerShell, yeah? So I hear Jeffrey Snover turning. I can hear him tuning in. No, but no, I get your point. From an exchange management perspective, right? It'd be great to improve things, yeah?
Yeah, especially now these days that working with PowerShell was pretty forward in the past. Now we do have a recommendation to move to at least PowerShell 7, even though that is not included in the operating system. But most of the administrators just stay with PowerShell 6 as an example. But the modules available, so the Exchange Online Management module, looks slightly different depending on the PowerShell version you use.
Right.
So, and this is not totally transparent for administrators. So why not moving to a completely different approach for managing Exchange Online in the first step? But as you know, we do not have a feature parity between the two management approaches, MS Graph and PowerShell.
Okay. So PowerShell's on your chopping block. Okay, great. What about public folders? What about public folders? Should we get rid of that?
Did you say? Wow, that.
I'm just asking.
Okay, let's. Get your point. Public folders, absolutely, right. So let's wait. How many times were public folders meant to be dead?
I know. I just said it just for fun, in case. But these are the kind of things that I know, and as Tony always put it, the cockroach of exchange, right? We can't kill it, but as long as we have these old legacy technologies, right, it sort of limits us from taking steps forward because we have to cater to the slowest user, right? So anyway, to your original question, I know I'm just poking fun at that one, or am I? But there are plenty of things that a product which has been around for 25 years has got that maybe we could get rid of to help us and our customers. So looking around, seeing what we can find.
I bet you will find something.
Oh, I think so.
Definitely. Okay, Greg, thanks for stopping by and for all the information you shared about disabling basic auth in Exchange Online account state. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.